Hi, my name is Seque. I'm sharing this because I truly believe that when we remember who we truly are in reconnection to all parts of ourselves, we keep the waters of life here as part of Mother Earth, and we as humans are an essential part of that as we heal and remember and re-embody who we truly are. When we go through a very intense trauma, the brain cuts off memory so that we can be in the present moment to survive. It has been termed post-traumatic amnesia, and this often continues after the trauma so that you can get on with your life, because that's what our brains learnt to do for survival. And yet the body is holding all that trauma, and somewhere within the brain wiring, beyond the walls that the brain's made shutting it down, exist all those memories. And beyond that are the lessons that we learn through the process of coming back together again, being whole in ourselves. And in many cultures in these times now, we see a lot of trauma happening. And of course this affects the brain in a similar way. It can make the brain compartmentalize and forget different things. And sometimes when that trauma is reenacted, that part of the brain that knew that opens up again. And this relates to ancestral trauma too. Now consider the repeated traumas and torturing that happened to women, the ones who worked with herbs, the ones who worked with visions and water, the ones that worked with birth and death and grief and earth ritual, plant medicines, body medicines, elemental medicines, ways of magic. And what happened to all those women? They were tortured, they were killed, they were burnt, they were drowned, they were raped, they were pillaged again and again and again, in front of each other, together, away from each other, turning each other against each other for some kind of safety. This trauma affected all life because we are all connected. And the spirits and the spiritual healing and the spiritual life force energy that comes through when we remember this connection. Remembering the connection to the plants, to the smoke, to the embers of the fire, to the waters, to prayer, to intention, to the body, life, death, fertility, rebirth, ritual, foods that heal, kitchens that heal, herbs that mend. And consider how that may have all been blocked off in the trauma of what happened to women. That could be where life got cut off from our brain connection, that got passed down generationally, along with a disconnection to our senses, our bodies, our life, and all the memory of all these gifts. And from my own experience, healing from a trauma that intense, the one thing that got me back into remembering was presence, gentleness, care and compassion of the masculine, who went out of their way to make it possible to sit with me and be present. That's the thing that healed me, and that is the thing that heals every little part of the feminine that was lost. And for a male and the masculine to sit and be present with all that is going to come through from what the women suffered through patriarchy, through disconnection, through control, has the potential to ignite the wound in the masculine that would make them unpresent. So what is it that I know from my ways of understanding creates the present masculine? Someone who doesn't confuse control for protection so deeply on their nervous system level that you feel it when they walk into the space. And what gives them the power to walk into the space with a grounded presence? Someone who has walked the process of grief, who has found the parts of themselves that they fear, and the parts of them that feel that they failed in the protection of the woman. Any parts of them that feel shame, that they've met these parts of themselves enough to be present and compassionate with themselves as they sit with Mother Earth, and be present as these energies are remembered, integrated, and become the support that was always there. Because this presence only sees itself through the regeneration of life. When we were feeling everything as a child, there will be times when we escaped our feeling state, and even used ways to escape our feeling state, because of the way our feeling state affects our nervous system, make us clamp up and go into fear. And sometimes that was going into a kind of override, almost into freeze and disassociate. But that energy that has been outside of ourself, which is us, that found our way out of ourself, almost like an electrical charge. When that energy comes back into us, because we direct it with our brain signaling through grounding techniques, bringing in our senses, looking around us, and really rooting to our base, and just even looking at our body to remember where we are and notice where we are. Because it's only from this grounded space that we can connect to what we learned when we were outside of ourselves and actually bring that into empowerment. So, for example, whatever we were learning when we weren't fully in our body, perhaps through daydreaming, perhaps through journeying, even tripping, they were all journeys and they were all relevant. But in the same way that journeys outside of ourselves can be difficult in what we're navigating, coming back in can also bring that journey, perhaps amplified from what we may have experienced outside of ourselves in journeys. But we've had the practice, we've had the teaching for what we're going to journey through, and we already know that we can. It's teaching the brain through experience and trust that we can be in our bodies and bring the visions that we choose that make us feel good into our bodies, and that we deserve that. So there's healing to do here, and to really allow this energy to move back into us. It is to grieve what was lost through the nervous system disconnection, and to move it, to flow it, to let it come through. Feel, flow,
waters flow, and it remembers, and as it comes back into us, it comes back into life. That's how important humans are. So as much as we can create all these traumas that have happened to us and our nervous systems has learned, we can always and also turn that energy around, because it's our creative force. So when we bring it back into flow, which takes grief, and perhaps even the grief in itself creates an expansion of the flow, if we could look at it like that. It's an energy that opens up space for the life energy to flow. So it's accepting that the levels of grief that we allow ourselves to process will be reflected in the levels of life force energy that comes through. And remembering a lot of this grief is collective, and that life is all connected. So perhaps this is something that is teaching me about a vision that I had. You see, I was lying in grief on the forest floor. I'd been through deep trauma and big shifts, let's put it that way. And I was lying on the forest floor in grief, and I picked up a leaf, and I asked the leaf, looking at its markings, because I have this way that you can ask most things your question, because it's all you and we are life. I kind of know that. So picked up this leaf and asked it, why does trauma exist? And I looked at it and its markings that branched out like a tree, and I looked outwards at the trees branching off in the forest there, and then looking into the distance and seeing the river flowing through, and hearing the message, so you remember you are all one. And in this moment, I kind of sensed the life flowing through, because what I just said about trauma and grief opening things wider, if it widens our perspective and connection, and the life force energy flows through, perhaps I can suggest that grief will show us the way through. And like anything, we can get caught in a loop. So the advice is to be aware that continuous catharsis creates brain chemicals, perhaps similar to the very things that took us away from ourselves. So it's another way back out, when actually true grief allows us to go into individuation, into ourself, because we aren't the only ones who are escaping ourselves. So many were, and that's why we go back in, and it is the leaders of New Earth who are leading from within. And a lot of that is about being in our central core, having nervous system balance, knowing how to ground and really connect with the body. But there's more. Because when we connect to our body, we journey into our womb space, the the source of imagination, which is then the source of all things. And here we connect to vision. Vision is like water. It is water. It's life. When we connect to our womb's vision, we're connecting to Mother Earth's vision. And we're connecting to the life force energy that wants to come through us and grow. And this is why there are protectors of feelings, and this is why it takes grief to come into our body, because there's been so much disconnect and we're individuating from that disconnect, and that takes great awareness of ourself and our grief, and also all the grief and all the things that cause that grief. Having awareness of that and being able to stay in our body takes journeying into our body, and it's like a balance. It's like the roots and the branches of the tree, because we're experiencing the healing in our body. And the things that happen in the past, but we're in our center, rooted to Mother Earth and connected to the stars, in the past and in the future, and right here now in our center with our intention, we can anchor the seeds of our vision into life and then dance it into being, because we are so in our body with trust and connection, balance, and that feels actually good, not just safe. It starts by being relaxed and breathing and noticing nature, and noticing how our body is relaxing in nature. And even if you don't feel like you're in nature now, looking around you, anything that represents nature and anything that feels good in a moment of you feeling expansion. So look around your space and just see through your feeling body what thing in the room is making you feel most expansive. Look into it and feel, because now I'm giving you another tool for how you can bring through these feelings into what is real. So the visions come through the feelings that they create. And this is how we bring the new dimension to Earth. Star beings, truth seekers, wayfinders, path forgers, space holders, cycle breakers, change makers. This is for all of you, because all these tools do is support you to find your way through birthing the new Earth. When we are held in nervous system safety, connected to Mother Earth, we have a chance to integrate more of our soul potential at this time of great change. If you would like to explore deeper into your own being
and have resources to support your own nervous system, to connect with who you truly are. I offer mentorship for women. I invite you to click on the link to enter www.birthingthenewEarth.com, where you can find out more.